Good morning. Welcome, everyone. We're glad to get started this morning. Welcome to the third Free to Be Faithful webinar. It's entitled, Are You Ready to Give a Defense? And we look forward to the next hour to hear a presentation from Tobias and have discussion on the important work of advocating for those with interest and life issues, protecting all of human life, actually. We'd like to begin our time together with a prayer, so please pray with me. Almighty God, we gather together and give thanks for all of your blessings and your constant care. We gather in common interest to protect your creation, all of your creation, the life of the unborn and the life of those nearing death. Guide our discussions, open our ears, and bless us with wisdom, confidence, and courage to defend the truth, with integrity to your word and respect for all those we encounter. Amen. So we're going to start today first with just a few instructions. At this point in the webinar, everyone is muted except for the presenters and the host. If you are at a computer, on the web page in the left bottom corner, there is a chat box where you will be able to type in your questions. You can type in the questions anytime during the webinar, but we will have a special time at the end of the presentation where we will go through all of your questions and make sure everyone's questions have been addressed. And this will be your time to join in the dialogue. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce to you our moderator for today's webinar, Ed Szeto. Ed will serve as our moderator and lead us through the subsequent dialogue. Ed will introduce our speaker and lead us through the question and answer period. Ed is a commissioned lay minister in the LCMS and our special projects coordinator for LCMS Life Ministries. So thank you, Ed, for being able to moderate us today, and I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Barb. Good morning, everybody. Just a couple of seconds to tell you why Life Ministry is so invested in being free to be faithful. Our lives are impacted every day by the legislation that's passed in the U.S. On the federal level and in our states. And one of the biggest areas where we do have a voice is in the life issues. And so this is a very important topic for us, and we're glad to be part of today's webinar. Now, Tobias, our guest for today, is president of the National Right to Life Committee, the nation's oldest and largest pro-life organization. A native of North Dakota, she has served on the National Right to Life Board of Directors since 1987. From 1983 to 1991, she was executive director of North Dakota Right to Life, and in 1991 was hired as National Right to Life political director, a position she has held until 2005. During her tenure as political director, pro-life majorities were elected in both the U.S. House of Representatives and U.S. Senate. In both 2000 and 2004, she oversaw the efforts of National Right to Life's Political Action Committee on behalf of George W. Bush. She has appeared on ABC's World News Tonight, NBC's Today Show, CNN, The NewsHour on PBS, C-SPAN, and Fox News Channel, as well as numerous television and radio programs throughout the country. She has been quoted in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, and USA Today. So thank you, Carol. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Great to be with you all. I think everything is okay on my end. Is there anything else you want, or should I just start?
Go ahead, Carol.
Okay. I'm going to cover a variety of topics this morning and just kind of give maybe a brief overview so that maybe I'll spark something, an interest in something that you've got, so we can ask, deal with other issues later or go into more detail in the question and answer period. Why life matters. We are created by God in His image. He didn't create trees or fish or birds in His image. He created the human being. He created mankind. in his image. Psalm 139, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. I can't imagine the grief and the misery, the pain that our Heavenly Father is feeling when he sees that our country is killing more than 1 million of his children every year. Why life matters, we are gifts from God, we are creations of God, and it is wrong to take that life, that innocent, human, vulnerable life. As I said, that there are more than 1 million abortions every year. That is a big. It's unusual. I'm sorry. I'm just going to start. In 1990, our country performed 1.6 million abortions. That was a high point since 1973. There were 1.6 million children killed in 1990. The latest statistics that we have are from the year 2011, showing more like 1,060,000. So it's a drop of about 500,000, a little more than 500,000 abortions every year. So that in itself is very encouraging. Women in this country are choosing life for their children. It's not just that there are fewer women or fewer women of childbearing age who are getting pregnant. It's also just the number of abortions per 1,000 women, the number of abortions compared to pregnancy. The rate is down, and that's great news. I think pro-life efforts have been successful. Unfortunately, it's just taking too long. It's now been 41 years. Teen pregnancy rates are dropping. The latest figures we've got, they just came out, are from the year 2010 to show that teen pregnancy, teen abortions, and teen births are all decreasing. From 1990, which was the high for teen pregnancy, 117 teens out of every 1,000 teens, about 12% of that entire population became pregnant. As of 2010, that had dropped to 6%. Now, of course, the abortion industry, Guttmacher Institute, did the survey, and they are attributing a lot of that drop, or that decline, to increased access to birth control. But I don't think that accounts for a 50% drop in teen pregnancies. Hopefully girls are not getting pregnant, finding other things to do with their time. But the teen birth rate and the teen abortion rate has also dropped. The teen birth rate, as a high of 1991, 62 girls out of every 1,000 were giving birth, teen girls. In 2010, that dropped to 34 out of every 1,000, which was a decline of 44%. Now, for teen abortions, their all-time high was equal in both 1985 and 1988, where there were 43 out of every 1,000 teens getting an abortion. By 2010, that had dropped to 15 out of every 1,000 teen girls. That's a drop of 66%, which is amazing and very good news that our young girls are not choosing abortion even when they do become pregnant. As to where the public stands on this issue, one poll conducted by CNN in March found that 40% of the country think abortion should be legal in all circumstances or most circumstances. 58% would say that either abortion should be limited to very few cases or not allowed at all. So it's roughly a 40 to 60 split, which is pretty consistent with most polls that we have seen over the past several years. Now, Politico, which is a newspaper out of Washington, D.C., just released a survey this last week, and they found that 19% of the country would say that abortion should be unlimited, unrestricted, all 50 states, which is pretty close to what we have throughout most of the country. 35% would support limits such as parental notice laws, parental consent laws for minor girls, or saying that abortion should be banned in the later months of pregnancy. Another 34% would say abortion should be allowed only if the mother's life is in danger or if the woman is a victim of rape or incest. And 11% would say that there should be a ban on all abortions. Now, what we have seen, there was a survey or a poll last year that showed about 12% of the people saying abortion should be allowed unrestricted for any reason. The Politico poll showed 19%. So it's in that range, I think, pretty fair. 12 to 19% of the people would say no restrictions on abortion. That, of course, is the position of abortion advocates like NARAL, Emily's List, Planned Parenthood, Barack Obama, and others. But they do not have the support of the American public. In the legislative arena, on a federal level, the United States House of Representatives passed the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which would say that once an unborn child can feel pain, which is about 20 weeks after fertilization, abortions would no longer be allowed. That bill has been introduced into the Senate, but we don't expect Harry Reid, of course, to bring that up for a vote. Last week in Washington, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who is the lead sponsor on this bill, along with Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, did a press conference calling on Harry Reid to bring that bill to the floor for a vote. And there were several groups, pro-life, pro-family groups, that were there to also speak on behalf of that bill. Another bill that has been introduced into the Senate is the so-called Women's Health Protection Act, which would wipe out all limits that the states have been putting on abortion up to this point, requiring that parents be notified before an abortion is performed, that women would have to be given specific information before they get an abortion, so-called informed consent or right-to-know laws. 10 states have passed the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. That would be wiped out by this bill. Some of you may remember the Freedom of Choice Act that was being pushed in the 90s and the 2000s. This is actually what we would call a supercharged Freedom of Choice Act, or FOCA. So right before the press conference, I thought it was very interesting and, of course, kind of fun. Lindsey Graham went to the floor of the United States Senate and called on Harry Reid to bring both bills, the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act and the Women's Health Protection Act, to the floor for a vote. He said, we all know where we stand on these issues. We don't need the committee hearings. Just bring them up, no amendments, just let us vote on them. And, of course, Richard Blumenthal, senator from Connecticut, who introduced the so-called Women's Health Protection Act, immediately jumped up and said, oh, no, we can't do that. There's a Senate process. We need to have committee hearings and go through and gather all this information. So they obviously don't want that bill to come to the floor for a vote. What I said in my statement during the press conference immediately following that is that the bill has been introduced as fundraising fodder for the gullible, because that's all it is. They do not want the senators to have to vote to tell the American public that they think abortion should be allowed with no restrictions through all 9 months of pregnancy. So I think Senator Graham is going to kind of keep pushing that. Okay, let's have committee hearings, but let's get these both out there and let's let the people see where you stand. So that's going to be probably the only thing that's happening in the Senate on the abortion issue with Harry Reid in charge. On a state level for legislation, over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of legislation passed. Unfortunately, some of the tougher states aren't able to get those passed, some of the more pro-abortion, more liberal states. But they're trying. We tell them it's a success if you can get a good pro-life bill through one house. Or, as in West Virginia this year, they were able to pass the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act in both houses of the legislature, only to see it vetoed by the governor. So there are some places where it would be considered a pro-life victory just to get a committee vote or to get something through the legislature, only if it's vetoed or only through one house, because they are at least still moving forward and they are reminding the people in their state that unborn children are being killed and need to be protected. We are expecting Governor Jindal of Louisiana to sign a bill that just came out of the legislature. It's the Unsafe Abortion Protection Act, very similar to what some of the other states have been passing. Texas got a lot of attention last year when they had a special session and they passed an omnibus bill that included several abortion provisions. The one that got the most attention was that abortionists would have to have admitting privileges at a hospital within 30 miles of where the abortions are being performed. That is shutting down a lot of facilities in Texas because A lot of abortionists just have sketchy backgrounds, they've got some criminal records, they've got some charges against them, and the local hospitals don't want to give them admitting privileges because that would then make the hospital liable for having, you know, these bad doctors on their rolls. Louisiana just passed that bill, and the governor is expected to sign it. Currently, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, and Wisconsin are in court over this real provision right now, so we'll have to wait and kind of see how that all works out. In Arizona, there is a lawsuit going against a bill that they passed to say that abortionists who are dispensing RU-486, or the chemical abortion, would have to follow FDA protocols. You know, the FDA says that you can't use this pill after 7 weeks, and that the woman would be given the first pill in the abortion facility, and then she has to come back 2 days later to get the second pill. The first pill would kill her baby. The second pill that she's supposed to come back 2 days later to take would expel that dead baby from the uterus. Very, very dangerous. But a lot of the abortion facilities are just giving her the pills, and they want to say, take this one now and go home and take this other one in a couple of days. So anyway, Arizona is saying, no, if the FDA said this is how you have to do it, you know, that's what they're trying to do. So that is in court. In Kansas just had a huge success. A lot of pro-lifers, hopefully all pro-lifers, are upset that Planned Parenthood is getting tax money, you know, to do abortions. And some of them are trying to cut it off, saying our tax dollars are not going to go to Planned Parenthood or to abortion facilities. So Kansas did something very clever in that they just said, we're going to give all of our money, all the Title X money that comes through the state, to full-service facilities that do flu vaccines and do basic exams, will provide social services and mental health services, and they just, you know, those are going to be the top priority. So by the time the money was given out to them, gee, there was just nothing left for the abortion facilities. So Planned Parenthood challenged that, but they weren't having any luck in the courts, so that actually was just dismissed recently. Iowa is trying to say that webcam abortions, where an abortionist can be sitting in front of his computer like we are, like I am now, talking to a woman in another city or even in another state. He can push a button on his computer, open a drawer in the room where she is seated, and the chemical abortion pill, you know, the drugs will come out. He will tell her to take one while he can sit there and watch her on screen, and the other one she's supposed to go home and take. So the Iowa Medical Board actually said that that would not be allowed in the state of Iowa, and they were the ones that were really pushing it. Planned Parenthood of the Heartland was pushing this, so that is also in court. Pregnancy resource centers are finding themselves in court because some of the local jurisdictions are saying that they have to tell women or even post something on their building that they do not perform abortions or that they do not have licensed medical staff on hand, and that the local health director says that they should go talk to a someplace with a licensed medical person. So that some of the pregnancy resource centers, like I said, are battling that in court. A case just recently in Montgomery County, Maryland, was dismissed, thrown out, saying that that violates the free speech of the pregnancy resource centers, telling them what they have to say. That would not be required by any other business or even any kind of medical facility. Google and Yahoo, you may have heard just recently, are trying to say that they are not going to accept deceptive advertising from pregnancy resource centers, although they haven't thrown anybody out or denied any ads because the pregnancy centers aren't lying and they're not deceptive. It was considered a public relations coup for NARAL to try to get it out there that the pregnancy centers are being deceptive. But none of the ads have been denied so far by Google and Yahoo because nobody, it's not happening. So that's, we have to be on the lookout for that as well, because the pregnancy centers are providing a very valuable service to the women who need it at a crisis time or a critical time in their life. What we're looking forward to or waiting for, in June, the Supreme Court will, likely in June, the Supreme Court will hand down a decision in a Massachusetts case where they had a bubble zone around an abortion facility. You couldn't get within 35 feet of the door, and that's now at the Supreme Court. They heard the arguments in January, and it will probably be June when that decision is handed down. We, of course, are looking forward to the elections in November. We need to change the Senate. Harry Reid is blocking pro-life attempts. He's a strong ally of the abortion movement. He would say that he is pro-life, but absolutely nothing that he does would ever show that. We do have a real possibility. We need the Republicans have pro-life leadership. They need to pick up 6 seats to kick Harry Reid out of the majority leader's seat. And I think that's very doable. There are possible Senate races in Arkansas, Louisiana, Montana, North Carolina, South Dakota, West Virginia, maybe Alaska, Colorado. I don't know if I mentioned North Carolina. But it's very possible that we could kick Harry Reid out of the leadership seat after November. So at least National Right to Life, and I know a lot of people around the country are going to be working very hard to do that. We also want to, of course, take the opportunity to overturn Obamacare if we can, to stop it, repeal it, change it, do anything we can because of the federal taxpayer subsidies for abortion, rationing of health care, the HHS mandate. There's just a lot of bad stuff in this bill, and if we can get a different Senate along with the House, maybe we can actually stop it or put some great impediments in its path. My big issue right now is the war on women. Pro-abortion advocates like to say that pro-lifers are waging a war on women because we don't want them to have this right to kill their unborn child. But if you look at it, it really is the war on women coming from the other side. They don't want women to have informed consent. They shouldn't get they don't think women should be given information about abortion alternatives, the risks to abortion, giving them all this information, even letting them see an ultrasound of their baby. They would oppose that because they don't want women to get the information that might make them change their mind. The webcam abortions, as I mentioned, where you can have an abortionist in one city prescribing the chemical pills that will kill the unborn baby to a woman in another city or in another state. It's a very dangerous procedure. At least 14 women have died in this country using that procedure. There's a lot of complications, severe hemorrhaging. It's very serious. So to have the abortionist hundreds of miles away certainly is not pro-woman. California has added a law that would allow non-physicians to perform first trimester surgical abortions. That is not pro-woman. There are just so many things that, the pro-lifers are always said, you support the baby, you're pro-baby, but you don't care about the women. I think it's just the opposite. We care about the baby and their mothers, the babies and their mothers. It is the other side that really doesn't care about women. They aren't concerned about safety standards. They aren't concerned about the circuit riders. I mentioned some of the states that are requiring the abortionists to have admitting privileges at the local hospital. Well, a lot of abortion facilities have, the old-fashioned term circuit riders. Maybe they might be now, plane riders, where they can fly from city to city to do abortions on, certain days of the week. That's not pro-woman. So I'm trying to get the message out there in any way that you can spread this. The pro-abortion movement does not care about women. They only want a dead baby, and they want their money, because this is a money-making business for them. We certainly need to make sure that in anything we do or say, we are not judging or condemning the women who have had abortions or who are seeking abortions. We are all sinners, and whether she gets an abortion or whether we steal from our employer or whether we, drive while drinking, there are a lot of sins. We are all guilty, and we need to make sure that we are not judging or condemning those women, because they need to be able to understand the forgiveness that is available through Jesus Christ. And they are not going to hear that message if they think that we are judging them. We need to give them our support, our sympathy, and help in any way that we can. And just one final announcement, the National Right to Life Convention is in Louisville, Kentucky next month, June 26th, 27th, and 28th. I would love to have you all come. It's just nrlconvention.com if you're interested and want to look at the information. One of our main speakers is going to be Dr. Angela Lanfranchi, who is a breast cancer surgeon, and she has some new information on the abortion breast cancer link that she is going to share with us. So if you can make it to Louisville next month, we'd love to see you there. That's it. I see Ed coming on, so we're probably ready to take questions.
Thank you, Carol. Just a reminder to everybody who's participating, in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, there's a chat box where you can type your questions, and I will relay those questions to our speaker. So, Carol, the first question that we have for you refers back to when you were talking about the admitting privileges for doctors. You mentioned that abortion doctors are bad doctors, and one of our listeners questioned, do you know that all abortion doctors are bad doctors, and how would you respond to that?
Not all of them are bad doctors, but I think, quite frankly, if you're going to kill an unborn child, your standards are probably not going to be that high. There are all kinds of reports of unsterilized equipment, women who have to go to the hospital, but the Planned Parenthood or the abortion facility will wait several hours because they don't want the notoriety of having an ambulance in front of their facility. There is a website. It's called abortiondocs. And I'm not sure if it's .com or .org, but you can actually check. They ask people if you've got any kind of medical or information on a doctor about anything where he has been charged with anything, to put that information up. So if you want to check out the abortionists in your area to see if they have been charged with anything or found guilty of anything, abortiondocs. I think it's .com. I would encourage you to just check it out.
Yeah, I just checked. It's .org.
.org. Okay, abortiondocs.org.
Yep. Okay. The next question is an easy one. What are the dates of the Right to Life Convention in Louisville?
June 26th, 27th, and 28th. It's a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And an NRL convention, excuse me, NRLconvention.com will have registration information and speaker information.
Yep. And just as a side note, I want to mention that I'll be there as well. I'll be one of the panel speakers as part of the National Pro-Life Religious Council, which we are members of, and we'll be speaking there during one of the sessions. Okay, here's another question, Carol. Do you believe that the abortion rate is down due to the use of RU-46 and chemical abortions?
That may have some impact, but RU-46 or the chemical abortions are actually more expensive and more dangerous than the surgical abortions. So some of the abortion facilities are not getting into it as much as you might expect. It would seem that it would be easier just prescribe a pill and walk away. But the abortion facilities aren't doing it as much as even I would have expected. Some of the states are starting to require RU-46 to be reported as a chemical abortion. When Guttmacher Institute did their survey, it takes a couple of years to get all the information. From 2011, they did include the RU-46 or the chemical abortion. So it is in there, and that there may still be a lot of it that is hidden, that it's not adding to the numbers, but I don't think that would explain anywhere near the drop of almost 500,000 per year.
Okay. Yeah, that was one of the surprising footnotes, I guess, when I looked at the new statistics, is that it does include now the chemical abortion. So the drop does include the new form of abortion, which means that overall the number of abortions is decreasing. All right, the next question. One of the participants wants to know how we can get more men involved in the fight against abortion.
It has traditionally been the role of men to protect children. Mothers are the ones that care for them, but men are supposed to be the ones protecting them. And I would encourage anyone to stand up and say this isn't a woman's issue. We as citizens need to be protecting our children. Men should be looking at this in a variety of ways. As a moral issue, certainly. We should not be taking the lives of innocent unborn children. As a family issue, I had one gentleman that told me, as for me in my house, we won't get an abortion. He followed the Joshua principle. But he said that he actually, I was flattered. He had heard me speak somewhere, and he said that I was making him rethink that position, that he needed to get more involved and encourage people not to do this. You know, women can certainly help with the pregnancy, or excuse me, men can help with the pregnancy resource centers, but they can also speak up. They can talk to their neighbors. They can, you know, even something as simple as putting on a bumper sticker. We need everyone involved, men, women, young, old, and that's actually something that's very encouraging is the younger generations actually tend to be more pro-life.
Yeah, and just to share a little bit about my background, Carol, you mentioned that sometimes people will say, well, I would never get an abortion myself or advocate for an abortion, but if someone else wants to, you're free to do it. To be honest, that's how I used to feel before I got involved in the life issues. And what changed my mind was listening to the executive director of my local pregnancy resource center when she talks about the women who come through her doors looking for help. What I didn't understand until that point was that these women, it's not their choice. They are looking for help, and there's no one to help her, and that's when they think that abortion is the only option that they have. There's a feeling of abandonment, and that, as a man, was what really got me thinking, what am I doing here? What am I saying? And I think if we can get that message out more, that will get more men involved in it. Okay, next question. I'm sorry?
I agree. We need them involved.
Okay. We have a question from South Dakota. Is there any state or legislation that gives the father rights to the child in the womb?
No. There were several court cases early on in the 70s and 80s, and the Supreme Court made it very clear that the woman is the only person, the mother, is the only person that can get involved. There are support groups for fathers of aborted children. Many of them, of course, feel the effects of losing their child. I talked to one man who said that an abortion put his marriage on the rocks for 30 years. And, you know, he told his wife she could do it, and she thought he wanted one, so she got the abortion. And they struggled for years. But this is something that men have not been able to get involved in any way. There have been many court cases, and right now the most they can do is offer support and you know, love to the mother of their child, because most women, actually I think it's around 60%, would say that they are getting the abortion because they don't feel like they are ready to be a single mom, and that their partner, whether it's boyfriend or husband, is not going to be there to support them. So unfortunately, we feel that women getting abortions because they think that their partner is pushing them. Not that they think, often he is pushing them into the abortion. But there is nothing that a man can do other than just, you know, plead and try to convince the woman not to kill his baby.
Okay. Our next question also comes from South Dakota. Personally, I believe that the LCMS church body does a great job of being pro-life. We encourage women to have these wonderful babies. However, I feel as if we don't support adoption and adoptive parents. What does Right to Life do to support adoptions and adoptive parents?
We have been very open to a variety of laws on adoption. There have been some, and states all have a patchwork of laws. Some of them say that the mother can release her child for adoption and keep it all private, and the child will never be able to come back and find out who she is. Other states will, of course, have, you know, the open adoption where, yes, you can find me after you're 18, or in many cases, it's the mother that's actually picking the family that is going to be taking care of her child. We try to promote adoption in philosophy. It's a great avenue. I mean, if a woman really is not ready or able to take care of that child, there are so many wonderful families and couples who are ready and want that baby and will take care of her. So for us, other than maybe supporting legislation that would make adoption easier, you know, we support it, but we haven't been working specifically on it.
That actually brings up a question regarding almost current events. I know recently in the state of New Jersey, they're trying to pass a law that states all adoptions have to be open adoptions, where everybody knows everything. And I believe New Jersey Right to Life is against that law, because most people are saying that they will help adoptions, make it easier for adoptions to happen, yet New Jersey Right to Life is against it. Can you explain that a little bit?
I think there are some women that would not want the child to come back and find them. Now, many would think that's not fair to the child if, that person, that boy or girl grows up, is 18 years old. They want to know where they came from. What is their heredity? What possible problems might they have genetically? But there are some women who just, if I give this baby up, I do not want them to ever find me. And I think the concern would be that if you force the open adoption so that the mother's name is going to be found, whether it's 1 year later or 30 years later, that she might decide she wants the abortion because at that time she doesn't want anybody to know about the baby. And I think that's maybe a concern of why would you force her to recognize that she's going to release this child for adoption. All that information is available in public, and of whether that might then lead her into the abortion instead.
And to be honest, Carol, I personally agree with that, that I think it would actually hurt adoptions in certain situations.
I think it would be great if the mother could decide, yes, this child can come back and find me. I want this family to raise the child. I have a nephew a cousin who adopted a baby, and they were there with the mother throughout the pregnancy, and she still comes to see visit the baby. But she was older, she had grown kids, so they have this wonderful girl, and she knows who her birth mother is. And to me, if that's where the mother is comfortable, that would be a great arrangement. But if she really doesn't want anyone to know that she was pregnant, she doesn't want this child to find her, I'm not sure we should force her to go through that.
Yep. Continuing on the adoption theme, a question: Have you had any involvement in the adoption tax benefit?
No. I'm not that familiar with it. Of course, I'm going to support anything that would promote and encourage adoption, but I'm not that familiar with the tax benefit.
Okay. All right. Another question comes in that asks, do you believe that abortion will ever be legally overturned in the United States?
Yes, I do. I don't know when, and I don't know how long it will take. But yes, I think, pro-lifers are not going to give up. The battle's been going on for 41 years, and, even before that. It may be if we can at least get the Supreme Court to overturn it so that each state would be able to decide their own laws, and then we have to work on a state-by-state basis. But I think at some point we are going to realize how barbaric it is to kill the children. So I truly believe that we will see it one day where unborn children are protected.
Actually, I have two questions about that. I mean, in Mississippi, there is only one abortion clinic left in the state of Mississippi because of the state legislations that have been enacted. Do you think that's a model that we can apply on a national level?
Well, quite frankly, I want abortions to stop. I don't think it really matters if it is done legally or just people change their minds and women aren't getting abortions, so the abortion doctors just go out of business. If legislation will put them out of business, which it is doing in many places, I think that's great. Mississippi does have one abortion facility, and I believe it is the admitting privileges requirement that is currently in court that is keeping that facility open because a judge has stopped or put a stay on the law. If that is eventually upheld, that the abortionist would have to have admitting privileges at a local hospital, then that final clinic would close in Mississippi. And whether it's legislation or people just deciding they don't want abortions, it would be great if all the abortion facilities were just closed.
Absolutely. Now, I also have another question, and actually I heard this at last year's National Right to Life Convention, where someone pointed out that the Dred Scott decision by the Supreme Court has never officially been overturned. And for those of you not familiar, Dred Scott is where the Supreme Court declared slaves to be property, and they can be used in any way that you want. So I personally would like Roe v. Wade to be overturned, but is it necessary for Roe v. Wade to be overturned?
Well, right now there are enough abortion advocates pushing to keep it legal that if Roe isn't overturned, they will do everything they can to find the providers. No, I don't know that Roe it wouldn't have to be overturned. It would in order for the states to pass laws, truly effective laws that are going to stop abortion. But again, we can amend the Constitution, or we can change hearts and minds so that people decide killing babies isn't the answer.
So just to be clear, even if Roe v. Wade is overturned, that doesn't mean the battle is over.
Absolutely not. Some people would like, National Right to Life supports a constitutional amendment to say that the unborn child is a human being and cannot be, killed by abortion. Of course, the legal terminology would be there. But that's going to, 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, 3/4 of the state legislatures. That's a big, long-term battle. It would be more easy to recognize or see that the Supreme Court could just take a law that comes up from the state and just start to dismantle Roe v. Wade piece by piece. They might say, this restriction is okay, and this limit is okay, and this protection is okay, and they can kind of slowly dismantle Roe. Or if we get the right president and the right Supreme Court, they can just overturn Roe completely. But what that does is send it back to the states. Prior to 1973, it was the 50 state legislatures that determined what the law would be in their state. If the Supreme Court would overturn Roe v. Wade, that would be the effect again where the 50 state legislatures would be determining their laws. So we would have a state-by-state battle.
Okay. All right. I think that's something that people need to understand, that the battle's not over if Roe v. Wade is overturned, although it would help us.
And that's also something the abortion advocates like to, put up the straw man that if Roe is overturned, abortion is illegal. No, it isn't, but that then kind of gets their base geared up to defend Roe. But no, nothing. If the Supreme Court tomorrow would say Roe v. Wade is overturned, nothing would change. Tomorrow, they would then give us the opportunity to start passing laws to protect those children.
Okay, great. Okay, question from one of the participants. I feel like most people within the church will say that they are pro-life, but so few are willing to speak out or put in time to act on this belief. What can I do as a member of the congregation to motivate people to action?
I don't have the quote here in front of me, so I don't know if I'm going to do it justice. But in the latest Lutheran Concordia quarterly, there was a fantastic article where it talks about the Lutherans in the pro-life movement being a case of faith without works. And I think it's true. Lutherans, especially in the LCMS, are very pro-life, but not very active. We can have, I think what's great is I know some LWML groups will have some kind of speaker where they will encourage their people then to bring gifts or clothes, baby gifts, toys for the local pregnancy resource center. And that's a way to at least kind of get started. It's a warm, fuzzy way to make people think that, not just make them think, but to get them involved. Bring diapers, bring maternity clothes, bring baby clothes, bring cribs if you've got, car seats. And they will give those to the Pregnancy Resource Center, and people can at least become aware that the service is in the community and is needed. Lutherans for Life has some great information that hopefully the churches would not object to having with information on the development of the unborn child, abortion techniques, and ways to get involved. I would love to see more pastors speaking on this from the pulpit. I think many of them are concerned that they might have a woman in the church that has had an abortion, and they certainly don't want to offend her. But she also needs to know that there is forgiveness. And if she never hears from the pulpit that abortion is a sin that can be forgiven, she may carry that with her for years. Our young people, our teens, our youth groups need to hear from the pulpit that abortion is wrong. If they ever do get into that situation where they are, one of them becomes pregnant, they need to know that they can go to the youth leader or the pastor or someone in their church for support and not be embarrassed thinking that abortion is the way to, keep everybody from knowing that they've been sexually active. I think there's a lot that can be done, of course, from the pulpit, but the pastors also need to hear from their members that they will support any effort in the church to take a stand. A lot of pastors aren't going to go out on a limb if they don't have the support from their members. Get involved with the local pregnancy center, get involved with the Right to Life chapter, get involved in lobbying your legislature, get involved in elections so that pro-life people will get elected to pass pro-life laws, raise money for the pregnancy centers and for pro-life groups. There are many ways that, depending on your talent, if you're a speaker, maybe the local school would let you come in and talk. There are many ways that, or if not, the Lions Club, the Rotary Club, find ways to get the message out. Set up a booth at any kind of county fair or a craft fair to hand out literature. There are a lot of ways, depending on your talents, that you could be very useful.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways is to actually run for political office yourself, starting on the local level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, to tag on to something you mentioned about maybe a young teen who doesn't want her friends or neighbors or family to know that she's sexually active, one of the questions that came in earlier is, what should I say to a young teen to encourage them to abstinence and confidence so that they don't make bad choices?
I can share a story that I heard. It was actually at the conference that Maggie ran a couple of years ago. A woman stood up and said that she was speaking to a bunch of Lutheran youth, talking about abortion. She said one young man came up and, started crying, collapsed in her arms, that he had gotten they were Lutherans, he had gotten his girlfriend pregnant, and she, went home, told her parents, and they took her to get an abortion because they did not want the church to know that she was pregnant. And he was, of course, sobbing because his child was now dead. If you've got any kind of story, if you can talk to them, let them know that abortion is something that is going to be lifelong. It's going to be with you forever. It's not worth it. Just don't do it. That was the big mantra for drugs a few years ago. Just don't do it. It's not worth getting into the abortion, raising a child, trying to take care of a child if you're 16 years old. I don't know. For me, I find it easy to talk about stories and try to convince them, look, others have gone through this. You don't have to. Wait until you find the right person. You are a creature of God. He loves you, and just take care of yourself. Look forward to a family, an education, a career. You've got so much going for you. Quite frankly, don't mess it up.
That's great. We have about 10 minutes left, so I want to try to catch as many questions as we can. One person asked, in your experience, do most people think the child in the first 20 weeks is not human? Or do most people acknowledge the child is human, but they say that it's not a person?
That is one of the biggest problems I have, is that people know the unborn child is a human being, is a person, whether it's, the first couple of weeks when it's still just those cells that are reproducing and, that tiny little embryo. you know, whether or not they would consider that to be a person, I think many of them know that it's at least a human being. It's life. Life exists. Our biggest struggle is that most people would say, yes, the unborn child, regardless of age, at stage of pregnancy, is a human being, but you have to counter that or balance that against the rights of the woman. And they're not willing to tell the woman that she has to go through this pregnancy for 9 months and she can't, you know, do whatever she wants with her body. So they want to have it both ways, and they're trying to say the unborn child versus the rights of the woman. And unfortunately, too many people would say the rights of the woman are going to take precedence or should take precedence. We need to convince people that abortion is not safe for women, and it's not healthy. There are a lot of complications, but mostly they're going to be psychological and emotional problems that will follow them for the rest of their lives. And you don't have to balance. So, yes, people would acknowledge that the unborn child is a human being throughout pregnancy.
Okay, 2 questions. The first one says, after we change hearts and minds, what support do we offer these mothers and babies after they choose to have the baby?
That is where the pro-life movement, I think, has been very effective, not just through the pregnancy. The pregnancy resource centers will provide the clothes for the maternity clothes, the baby clothes, the diapers, you know, the crib if the mother needs it, a place to stay if she needs it, medical care if she needs it. But many of them are also getting into educational classes where they will help train the mother to do something so that she can have a career. It might be further schooling, or it might be career training, so that she is able to support herself and to take care of her child. And that's something that, you know, I would love to say that abortion is going to be illegal, so all pro-lifers can now turn their support to this avenue. Unfortunately, we're kind of divided. But there are many more pregnancy centers that are offering the kind of support that would help a woman to, you know, parenting classes. How does she take care of the child, but then also to be able to support herself and her child.
Yep. One of my colleagues at Synodical headquarters reminds me that the LCMS recognizes a number of social ministry organizations that offer adoption and foster care services, along with services to young mothers. These recognized service organizations welcome volunteers and donations and support in any way that you can. Okay, and another question we have is, are there any church programs that can be used as an outreach to heal women who have had an abortion?
I'm not sure I'm the one that could answer that. There certainly are a lot of outreach groups, and quite frankly, the Catholic Church does this so very well. They have a lot of different organizations. A lot of the dioceses will have someone in charge of working with the programs. I'm not sure that I've seen that quite as much in our church, unfortunately, but there are a lot of groups and counselors out there that will help and work with the women.
Yeah, I think the best thing we can do is to know what local pregnancy centers are available to refer women to. Most of the pregnancy centers that are involved with CareNet or Heartbeat International do offer post-abortion healing programs, but those are things that we have to find out. A lot of women also will not go to a church to participate in post-abortion healing for many of the reasons that Carol had stated earlier regarding not wanting other people to know they've had an abortion or not people knowing that they're sexually active. So having a church-based program is difficult. Having said that, check with your local pregnancy center. Check also with nationwide organizations like Silent No More Awareness Campaign. Rachel's Vineyard, I believe, is one of the big Roman Catholic programs. And also check with Lutherans for Life because they do have a post-abortion healing hotline and they can offer help as well. So those are good resources that we have. There is a comment from one pastor, and I'll read it quickly. We have about 5 minutes left. He writes, I'm a pastor, and I speak against the sin of abortion and other life issues as well, often. However, I also believe that there's nothing more effective than one-on-one relationships with my people. I challenge all pastors to do the same. So thank you, Pastor, for encouraging other pastors to speak out on this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. For questions that we don't have time, do you have an email that you can offer, Carol?
Absolutely. Tobias, Tobias, at nrlc.org. Tobias at nrlc.org. And I would be happy to talk to anybody that didn't get their questions answered today or is just looking for more information.
Thank you, Carol. And also as well, don't forget that LCMS Life Ministry is available as a resource to you. You can reach me at ed.szeto@lcms.org. There is one question up here that I can answer quickly. And let me scroll back to find it. How do you encourage a barren couple towards adoption rather than trying IVF? Just to make everyone aware who's on today's program, the Life Ministry, LCMS Life Ministry, and the Concordia Seminary Life Group are co-sponsoring a symposium in November, on November 8th, a one-day symposium to talk specifically about infertility ethics. And this is a program that's directed at pastors, seminarians, commissioned ministers, and parish nurses. So check out lcms.org/life to find out more information about that symposium. Okay, we have a couple of more minutes. Let me see. Are there any suggestions for affordable adoption in the U.S.?
That's a tough one. A lot of people are going more toward private adoptions, where they will, work with an attorney and select the couple that is going to take care of the child, and then you still have, the hospital expenses for the maternity care, the delivery. It's a whole area that needs to be worked on, but I don't know that you can. The biggest problem in this country is that there aren't babies to adopt. That's why so many people are going overseas. So the money certainly is a concern or a problem, but the bigger problem here is that there just aren't babies to adopt, which is why you see a lot of people encouraging, start looking at a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old who also needs a home. Don't necessarily look for the baby, because women are keeping their children mostly in this country.
Yeah, and that's one of my personal pet peeves, if you will, is about how expensive it is to go through the adoption process. One of our listeners notes that Bethany Christian Services is a reasonable Christian adoption agency, and I assume she means reasonably priced, since we were talking about the cost. Okay, and that, I'm talking to people who want to do foster care and adoptions. They are running into a lot of problems with the state laws that say you have to be open, you can't force them to be Christians and things like that. I know couples who have stopped the adoption process because they couldn't abide by the restrictions that their state laws were placing on them. And I think that's another area where we can be active and participating in the public square.
Voice is needed.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. I think we are coming up to the end of our hour here. Appreciate all the comments and questions that have been asked, and thank you very much, Carol, for joining us. I know it's very early where you're located, but you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and thank you very much for all the comments you've made and answering all the questions. Back to you, Barb.
Okay, thanks, and thanks, Carol. Thanks, everyone, for participating. We invite you to join us for our next Free to Be Faithful webinar, and that's scheduled for July 17th at 9 a.m. Central Time. Our speaker in July will be Eric Teasel, and he's the director of the Manhattan Declaration, and that's a national movement of Christians who advocate for life, marriage, and religious freedom. All you have to do is Google Manhattan Declaration and learn more about their work in advance of the July webinar. Today's webinar will be posted online for viewing of anyone who is not able to join us, and you'll go to lcms.org free to be faithful. That's lcms.org free to be faithful. You'll find the recording of this interview and previous webinars that we've offered in the past. Also, all sorts of other good resources that will help you in your work in the public square. So thanks everyone for participating today, and have a blessed rest of the day. Bye.